Hi everyone, I'm glad to see you in our new lesson. Today we are going to take a closer look at the Edit Geometry rollout. If you like our videos, be sure to join us on Patreon, where you'll find even more valuable content. The Edit Geometry tab provides global controls for modifying poly objects and is available even without selecting a sub-object level. The first tool is Repeat Last. This is a very useful command. For example, we will extrude, then select any polygons and repeat the action. It's especially useful when the previous operation is complex, such as extruding along a spline. The next tool allows movement constraints along the existing geometry. The first mode is the default. It doesn't impose any constraints. The second mode restricts transformations to edges, which is useful when you need to move something without distorting the object's proportions. The third mode restricts movement to the polygon plane, allowing you to adjust the position of a vertex without distorting the plane. And the fourth restricts movement along the normal, which is used less often. The next tool is Preserve UVs. It activates a direct correspondence between the object's geometry and its UV map. By default, this option is disabled, so if you change the object, its UV map will change as well. When enabled, changing the object's geometry doesn't affect the UV map. Very useful. The next function is Create, which works with sub-objects such as vertices, edges, and polygons. The next is Collapse function. It merges selected subobjects into a single point. It works with all subobjects except elements. The following tool combines selected objects in the scene into a single poly object. You can also select objects from a list if there are many. Use the Ctrl key to select multiple objects, the Shift key to select many objects, or just press Ctrl+A to select them all. The next tool is Detach. It's available at any subobject level and detaches the selected subobject into a new separate poly object. The pivot point remains in the same position as the original object. Detach has two additional options. If you check this box, you can separate some polygons into a new element, but the sub-object will remain part of the poly object. The second checkbox creates a separate poly object by cloning the selected sub-object and placing it at the same coordinates. The following tools allow us to slice a polygonal mesh along planes or within a specified area. The first slicing tool is the Slice plane. When activated, it creates a visible plane that can be rotated and moved. It has no boundaries, but they are displayed for convenience. The slice plane will cut the geometry, even if it doesn't directly intersect the object. The cut is made only after the slice button is clicked. If the split option is enabled, the created slice will separate the geometry into two elements. If it's not enabled, the cut will simply add new edges at the slice location without splitting the geometry. The Reset Plane button restores the Slice Plane gizmo. The Quick Slice button activates a quick slicing mode, allowing you to slice the geometry without having to manually adjust the plane gizmo. The plane is always perpendicular to your viewpoint, and this operation can also be performed in the camera view. Split can also be used in this mode. In Cut mode, you can create edges by clicking on the mesh. This can be done interactively by rotating around the model. When hovering over an element, the cursor changes to help with visual control. You can also enable snapping to make your work even more precise. To exit the Cut command, right-click. Also, you can select the desired polygons, and the slice will then be applied only to them. The next tool M-Smooth performs smoothing similar to the Mesh Smooth modifier. When you open the tool menu, the smoothing is applied to the entire object, or you can choose to smooth only selected polygons. For example, I've divided the box into different smoothing groups and materials. Now, by checking this box, we can activate the separation by groups, and this one for the separation by materials. Clicking the plus icon increases the number of iterations. The next tool, Tessellate, increases mesh density. The first mode connects a new vertex at the center of the polygon to the midpoint of each edge, while the second mode connects it to each vertex. Using this parameter, you can slightly extrude or depress the vertices. Repeated application allows you to increase mesh density without changing its shape. The following tool makes all selected subobjects coplanar along the XY or Z axis. This is a very useful tool. You can select a surface, align it along the Z-axis, and be sure it's perfectly flat so you can continue working with confidence. The next option aligns the selected subobjects to the viewport, regardless of the viewing angle. The Grid Align tool aligns all vertices of the selected object or subobject to the plane of the active viewport. For example, I intentionally positioned the object slightly off from the coordinate origin. Now, when I select the desired view and click Grid Align, the selected polygons are aligned with it. Let's choose the left view and change the alignment plane. It's a specific tool, but it has its uses. The following tool applies a relaxation effect to the selected object or subobject. It has settings that adjust the position of a vertex to the average position of its neighbors in a range from -1 to 1, with a default value of 0.5. Number of iterations. This option keeps open edges in place. And this one holds the farthest vertices from the object center. The next set of tools hides selected elements. The first is Hide Selected. The second is Hide Unselected. And the third is Unhide All. Next is the Named Selection tool. We can assign a name to any subobject in this window. For example, let's name these boxes and then select them from the list at the subobject level. The second to last option is responsible for automatically removing isolated vertices when deleting elements. If you disable it and delete an element, isolated vertices will remain. By default, this option is enabled, and it's generally best to leave it that way unless there's a specific reason to turn it off. The last option disables interactivity for the operations being performed. By default, it's active and it's convenient. But if the scene is large and you need to perform operations on a lot of polygons, I recommend disabling that 3ds Max would work faster.
Well, that's it for this lesson. Subscribe and like if you enjoyed the content. Be sure to visit our Patreon by the link in the description and learn easily with Softschool.